Very happy to have with us today Jason Arce, the Grammy Award-winning saxophonist, alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, soprano saxophone. Jason plays all three and is absolutely spectacular at all three of them. He's performed at Coachella, Lollapalooza. He's also appeared on the Jimmy Fallon show and David Letterman. So, Jason, thanks so much for coming on today.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we tried to do this a couple times, but the screen froze. So we're gonna start in a totally different direction if that's okay.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah. So the first thing I asked you about was what people saw, what people see in you that keeps the phone ringing, because obviously you have the talent, but there is something unique that makes them say, "Oh, I'm calling Jason for this gig." What do you think it is about you?
I would say that I try to be as easy to work with as I can, and I think spending time in a lot of different genres helped a lot. I've played keys at church, and I've sang at church, and I've played guitar, and I've played sax in a lot of different ensembles, and everything from playing with someone like Joe Jonas to Cory Henry to jazz gigs at Smoke or whatever is happening. I think having a lot of different experience helped me be comfortable in a lot of different situations.
I mean, you definitely have your own voice on the instrument. I mean, I was certainly aware of that when we went to grad school together about 15 years ago. Um,
Wow.
and I'm just kind of curious, like, was there ever a point where you were like, I'm okay, like I'm on the road right now to having my own sound and not just, you know, quote unquote copying. I mean, we do have to copy as we learn, but was there ever a
Yeah.
point, or is there a point more recently? When would that be, you think?
I'm still doing that now. I'm still trying to figure stuff out. I still practice and I'm still listening to different stuff all the time. There's not I feel like anyone who's really serious about this music is never done with it. I feel like there's always something you're trying to get better at. And then when you get to that point where you think, oh man, I think I sound good. And then you hear a recording of yourself and you're like, "Ah, I really don't sound good. I got to fix that." So for me, there's always been it's just been kind of I think slowly getting better throughout my career, I guess, because I didn't start playing jazz till I was 18 or 19 really, because I didn't take any lessons or anything about theory or arranging until I was in college. So
Did you learn jazz primarily off the records?
yeah, in the beginning, yeah, I learned everything from by ear at first, like saxophone and guitar. I would just pick out stuff on the radio and try and figure out how to play it.
No, that's crazy. So there was
Yeah.
no formal jazz instruction in the beginning.
No, not till I got to college. I went to VCU in Richmond for my undergrad, and I was there from 2002 to 2008.
Yeah, and we did meet at NYU in New York
Yep,
City, the
right
jazz
after that.
capital of the world, right?
Yeah, right.
And I wanted to also ask you because,
Yeah.
your success in this industry, unquestionably. And we go through our early years with a lot of different perspectives
Mhm.
from teachers or mentors. Has anyone ever, when I ask you, what do you think the most important piece of advice that you received early on? It could have maybe not helped you even, like 'cause you did the opposite, or helped you. What would that be, you think?
Ooh, I think I guess one of the first things that I heard that really hit me as far as advice was my arranging teacher, Doug Richards, in Richmond. He's incredibly brilliant. I learned so much from him. Um, but he said that if you're in music for the money, you're in the wrong business. And I guess it prepared me to be broke if I needed to be for a while, because for a while I was.
I mean, this isn't, I mean, being in the music business is not about the money at all.
It's
And
different because it's not like a clear thing. It's not like you can apply for a touring gig, get it, and then you're just working. It's just
well,
there's not a clear way to make a living doing this.
you're a bright guy. I don't think that you graduated school and you were like, okay, like I'm going to stand outside the school now and I'm ready to work. But you work when you work with someone like Cory Henry or some of the other people that you name, though, you have to have the work ethic for sure.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about your work ethic and practicing a little bit, that sort of thing. Because you said you're still practicing to this day.
Yeah, I definitely still practice. I need to, or I'll sound even worse. I think when I got to college, I finally had a lot of time to actually practice. So I would spend anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day usually practicing. Um, this was in Richmond at VCU. Even when I got to NYU, I had even more time at NYU. I thought the program at NYU left a lot more practice time than I did in my undergrad because in NYU, we didn't have to take general education classes for the most part. Where in my undergrad, I did. I had to take like history and math and electives and foreign languages. And NYU for the grad program, we didn't. I could just focus on like writing and playing. And that's all I did.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of these people you played with before, which and you talk about if you're in this for the money, then forget it. I 100% agree with you. That's why I wanted to ask you. I mean, what does success mean to you in the music world? I mean, because some people would say it's I have X amount of followers or X amount of streams, or I played with this person, or I play with like what does success mean to you
For
for
me, being successful as a musician, especially like in New York, was being able to support myself just doing music. Like I was, for the most part, I was teaching and playing and making a living doing that for up until I left in 2020. Like there was I did some stuff on the side. I did some acting as well, and I used to be a chef because my dad's a chef. So I kind of grew up in the restaurant business, but for the most part, music was like my primary bread that I was making for the last probably 10 years that I lived in New York.
Do you think that if, I mean, I know music will always exist, but let's say you didn't play the sax, you probably would have done something like been a chef maybe or an actor.
Yeah.
You have that creative side.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've always been really comfortable in the kitchen. My dad obviously went to culinary school when I was like 5, 6 years old. So I kind of grew up in the kitchen. And then when I got to college, I did it part time, and then I did it in New York a little while after NYU actually. And then once I started traveling and playing, I kind of gave that up because you can't do both.
I was, when we go on stage and we play for people, there's something that happens, or even just when we're at home,
Yeah,
when we are practicing and enjoying it music, I kind of feel gives us something that we can't get anywhere else. It's like almost like we're
yeah,
only limited to the English language and, screaming or whatever, but the music gives us this whole other way to express ourselves. I mean,
sure.
do you feel a little about like similar in that way, or what, that something else completely emerges when you're playing?
Yeah, I feel like when you're in a room with like guys who can really play, and it's like even just like kind of a smaller ensemble, there's something like different about that setting. Like playing in like a quintet or like a sextet or even a quartet. It's like for me, those are the funnest gigs because when the players are good, then there's a lot of freedom within what you're doing, and there's a lot of different places you can go. There's kind of like this. I think it's more of a blank canvas when you're playing in that kind of setting.
Yeah, and we were talking before this, and I had mentioned that, you know, when I saw you were on the roster for the ensemble, I'm like, I kind of YouTube everybody to see who's going to be,
Yeah,
in the band or whatever. So I remember I saw some videos you playing with Elu, playing McCoy Tyner, and thought that was so hip. And you talked about playing in a quartet or sextet. Let's do a hypothetical here. Let's
sure.
say that you can go back in time to the 1960s or 50s, anybody, and you have your own band, Jason Arce trio, quartet, quintet, you pick it. Who's going to be in the band, the rhythm section?
Oh, man, that's so tough. I mean, I was always big into Elvin's sound. I think Elvin Jones and Ed Thigpen were probably my favorite drummers that I heard on records that I was just like, man, the swing, the way they dance on the ride, it was just like I had never heard anybody play like that.
Do you know what
So
Moises is?
what's that?
Do you know what the app Moises is?
No, what's that?
It's an app where you can actually like you take tracks and you can separate everything. Like so you could take
Oh,
John Coltrane quartet and take out McCoy and Jimmy Garrison and just have the
ooh.
drums playing. So you
Oh,
talked about Elvin. Like one time I put on like a 30-minute track and like just listen to Elvin play. It's pretty
oh
cool.
my gosh. Oh, that's amazing. I need to get that.
Yeah, yeah, it's like $6 a month. So I would look into that. But
Yeah.
who would be the bassist or piano player or guitarist or
Obviously, Jimmy Garrison, Ray Brown, um, John Lamb from Duke Ellington's band was also one of my favorite players. I thought he had a really, really beautiful sound. Um, those guys on bass were like top tier for me. And then piano's tough. I always loved Chicks playing. Always loved Tad Dameron. I'm a big fan of his playing and his composition. I think he writes some of the best tunes along with like Joe Henderson and Wayne. Like they have such a cool way of writing.
yeah,
I
I
love.
mean, we draw inspiration from all of these people.
Yeah.
Where do you think you draw inspiration from that has zero to do with music? Is it family? Is it a higher, you know, power? What? Because you're still in this for so long, and I'm
Yeah.
curious where you get the inspiration from.
I think I'm into a lot of different stuff beside music. Like obviously, I've been a Christian since I was 16, so I've that's been almost 25 years. And I'm also big into like just other hobbies. I think I've always been into a lot of different stuff. Like I'm big into surfing. I'm big into riding motorcycles and guns and you know the Bible. So like I like a lot of different stuff and you know everything from
So you
indoor.
left New York for Virginia Beach, I assume during COVID,
I did.
and
I
you
left that
and
summer.
so I mean, have you felt like I mean, because I know you grew up there. Do you feel like it's almost like a full circle type thing going back to because I live my house is 5 minutes from where I grew up. Like, do you feel like you kind of
Oh
like
wow.
did you go home in a sense and as a new person, does it feel like that at all?
Sure, in a way, because like I moved, I didn't plan on leaving New York at all. Like right before COVID hit, I was supposed to go out of town and do shows, and I had a bunch of stuff booked, and I was teaching at a music school, and then everything just kind of stopped. I was like, okay, well, not sure what to do here.
Yeah.
Like, just sit at home for a while. I came back to Virginia just to hang for a few months, and like, I think a lot of us thought that it would kind of blow over, and everything would kind of like pop off in the summer, and we could all go back on the road and do our thing and play, and it just didn't do that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
feel New York has changed quite a lot too since the
yeah,
pandemic. I mean,
right.
like I maybe just so many places closed and stuff, and it's almost like I kind of feel that ever since the pandemic, like people used to say New York's the jazz capital of the world, you know.
Mhm.
After that, after COVID, I went to New Orleans to check that out and stuff. But I kind of feel like it's just everywhere. The world, the space that we're living in 2024, it's like wherever you go, there you are with jazz.
Yeah, I think because so many guys left New York during COVID, I think little scenes kind of popped up in a few different places. Like I lived with, I don't know if you know Tabor Gable. He's a great pianist. Um, he's we still talk. He's great. He's funniest dude. He moved back to Knoxville, and a bunch of my friends had left. Like some went back to Detroit, some went back to the West Coast, some moved down south. It's like it's a different it's a different group of guys up there.
I
Some
mean,
stayed, but
do you miss New York at all, or you're cool where you are?
I really do like where I am. I'm close to the beach. I surf all the time. I have a job down here, but like, and I still play a lot. But I think I miss what New York was when we moved there back in like 2008. Because
It
I
was
feel like,
different.
I think it was more of a golden era of New York because like there was a lot going on and I think it was more feasible to make a living playing music up there at the time than it is now.
Yeah, and this just might be me, but I kind of feel when we were, there's a certain like cool darkness feeling of jazz
Yeah.
that it's just I don't really feel it
Yeah.
personally, and but and I kind of just that thing kind of slowly maybe it'll come back. And we
I
talked
think,
about meeting in NYU and stuff, and you come from a place I know at the time, and I'm sure you knew a ton of standards. And I feel like they didn't really emphasize that too much on why you like, oh, you have to know all these standards and stuff. Um, but so I wanted to ask you, what do you think is missing in the jazz education world? Like if you could create your own class or something like that, what do you think that students need to know that they may not necessarily learn in school?
I feel like, I mean, I'm still learning tunes, but I feel like having a really big, like, I mean, you can testify to this. Like, when I first met Brian Lynch and started playing with him, I was like, man, this guy like knows everything. Like, this dude is like an encyclopedia. Like, I want to be like that. And like when I met Roy Hargrove, he was like that too. He knew like every tune. Like he knew the lyrics to all the tunes too. Like that was always inspiring to me. I was like, okay, so these guys are really like they know their shit and they know this music like in and out. Like Brian doesn't know just bebop, he knows all the Latin stuff too. Like he knows like all these cats and like that I had never even heard of. I learned a lot from him and discovered a lot through him. But like I feel like guys like that are really they I think they set the bar in a good place because it makes you want to learn more tunes and really know this stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. Who do you who do you like? I know you like influences musically that are unrelated to jazz, would you say?
Oh man. I think some of the first music that I got into was like I listened to a lot of Dave Matthews Band because I was really into Leroy. I liked his sound because he wasn't flashy. He was like very tasteful. He always played the song. He wasn't like in the way of anything. It was really I always liked his playing and I got really into Marvin Gaye and Motown and I got into a lot of that before I really got into like jazz and bebop. Like I think the first tenor player that I heard that kind of freaked me out was Paul Gonzalez, who was Duke Ellington's lead tenor for a long time. And he took this solo. He took one at Newport, and he took one. I think it was at the Blue Note. And I had never heard anybody play the saxophone like that up until that point. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to figure that out. So like,
Was
that's
that
kind of
the
where it
that was the
started.
moment where you
That
like
was it.
a light switch went off, kind of?
Yeah, I was like 13 or 14, and I was like, what is he playing? Like, I had never heard that, and like, I didn't really understand chord changes yet, and that songs could modulate into different keys within the same tune because everything I heard was like pop tunes and it was all diatonic.
Yeah,
Like,
once you gain the knowledge of the jazz harmony, it's just
mhm.
it's another world, and that's the thing about this music and improvising. It's just I've played all styles like just like yourself, but jazz gives us something we almost can't get anywhere else. Improvising,
Yeah,
has music ever saved you in a time where you like if you weren't a musician, you could have gone down the wrong path in life or something like that?
I think if I wasn't doing music, I would still be doing something creative as far as like either acting or doing the chef thing. Um, I actually kind of stopped playing for a little bit after grad school for a couple months when I had a chef gig because I was just kind of not only was I broke, I was just kind of like I need to do something else because like I'm not able to support myself. I'm just gonna like take a breather from this. And then like a couple months later, I was like, I need to play. And
Yeah,
that was it.
something was missing, right?
It was really missing. Like I think I got a little jaded early on because like I think it took probably 4 years in New York before I was like really getting any work. And like the 2 years after grad school that I was like not in school and not really playing that much. It was just like, what am I doing wrong? And it was just like I heard a lot of guys just say like, you need to be here for at least like 5 to 10 years before you're like really working up here. Like it's just how it is. You got to
Yeah, I mean, and
consistently being on the thing. It's just like you have to be there.
there's no short of musicians
Yeah.
in New York City. That's and I you compose music as well. Um,
Hey,
has there any been a song that you've written that I mean, obviously sometimes we have to sit down and like write things down or get behind the piano. Have you ever written something where it just came to you like you don't know where it came from? It almost wrote itself.
yeah, I've had a few of those. I think those end up being the funnest ones to play. Like there's like two tunes that I wrote on guitar that I sing and play guitar sometimes, and that kind of like makes sense because I usually hate the lyrics that I write. So like usually I'm like, oh, I like that melody and that chord like progression, but I don't like the lyrics. So I'm always like talking to my friends who write songs, like, can I get a little bit, help on this one? And
What
then
kind of guitar do you have? I'm just curious.
oh, I have a few. I have a Guild mahogany acoustic, and I have a Fender American Strat, and I have a Gretsch lap steel, and I have a Luna acoustic that I use.
Do you think like playing the guitar? I mean, it's you're still expressing yourself, but like playing the
Yeah,
guitar is a totally different expression than
so
playing the
different.
horn.
It's so different because, like, with saxophone, it's a single note instrument. You can't play chords. You can't play like you can outline chords in harmony, but you can't play chords in harmony like you can with like a guitar or piano. So I think that also like opens your ears up. I think it's good for any horn player to be really competent on guitar and or piano.
You think all horn players should definitely learn harmonic instrument?
Oh yeah, I had to learn piano in undergrad for a long time, and I ended up loving it. So I still play keys a lot now.
Yeah, that's it. I went to Berkeley for my undergrad, and they did not make us take piano classes. It was so strange.
Huh.
You
I didn't
think
know that.
Berkeley out of all places, right?
Yeah. This is
Uh,
weird because like with my undergrad, you had to learn a lot of piano, but with NYU you didn't. And also, I think NYU was a little more. I had a great experience, but I would say there's not like focused on one thing. I feel like Juilliard focuses on something, and then Manhattan School focuses on something, and New School is even I think more open than NYU because you can kind of study with anybody. But with NYU, I feel like and almost in the same vein that their faculty was pretty diverse too, because I know, there was I, you know, played with Schofield a bunch at school, and then also studied, took lessons with Wayne Krantz, and then like Ralph Alessi, and then Brian Lynch, and then Ralph Lama. So they're
oh,
all
you
like,
study with Wayne Krantz?
yeah, I took a semester with Wayne.
That's wild.
Yeah, because you could study with any instrument. So I wanted to study with like basically like four different dudes who were going to give me like completely different perspectives.
Yeah.
So like Ralph Lama was like big into like playing through tunes in all 12 keys, and he was big into like sound and like etudes because he said, he gave me a lot of Eugene Boza stuff because he told me that Sonny Rollins and Joe Henderson used to practice that stuff, and that's why their facility was so amazing. um, so I learned a lot from Ralph, and then learning a lot of tunes and language stuff from Brian Lynch, and then Ralph Alessi's whole thing is about finding your voice through composing, like not just like playing the instrument. He wants like you to figure out who you are by like writing melodies over different chord structures and doing all this stuff based in composition and arranging, which is really cool. And Wayne's thing is all about rhythm. So they're all like coming from very different places, but I feel like it was a really good experience to get a little bit of all of that.
Oh no, I took lessons with Brian Lynch
Yeah.
and Peter Bernstein and Dave Pietro. So I did a little something kind of similar to you. And
Yeah. That's good.
I mean NYU is, it's I think you're right. It is a great school for sure.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of different teachers there. They're not coming out of just like bebop only. So I like that as well. I thought that was a good move because Wayne got me to really think about rhythm differently because
He
he's very
opened your
like
eyes up to something completely different.
yeah, because he's not he can play bebop, but he doesn't like play that on his gigs or anything. He doesn't like do that. But his whole thing is about like the rhythm and like being aware of where you are in the beat when you play. So we would do these like really simple exercises where we would put on a click right at a medium tempo, and then we would like play phrases together, and then like we would record it, and he'd be like, okay, so you rushed there, and I laid back there, and then there you laid back a little bit after I did, and then we did this, and it was like he was like because he likes to be in the very center of the beat, like that's his whole thing. Like if you watch him when he plays, he clicks his teeth because he's always like really trying to feel the center of the beat.
Oh my goodness.
But his rhythm is so freaking good. Like it's like the guy plays like a metronome. It's so hit. Like
No, he's a savage. I agree with you 100%.
I'm so badass. I love his playing so much. But that's like
That's
his
funny. I
thing.
just was just watching a video of him like maybe 1 or 2 nights ago.
Yeah. I mean that
Uh,
trio with Tim and Keith is just like pinnacle of like guitar trio. It's so hip.
Oh, it's wild. I was curious, do you have any like things pre-performance rituals, or are there any superstitions about playing, before like when you before you play a concert, like anything you need to do or warming up or you just like you like to go on and hit?
I always warm up a little bit, like just try to put air through like whatever horns that I'm playing because I play flute and some clarinet as well, but like I always try to put some air through the horns and then just try to relax because I got stage fright once when I was in middle school and I screwed up and I got so mad at myself that I never did it again. So like I was like, yeah, I ain't doing that again.
Do you ever get nervous still? I mean, because you played on some
Yeah, I get
never,
excited, but I'm not nervous.
yeah, never nervous.
No,
Wow.
no, because like usually if it's like a really big performance, I think we're well rehearsed enough to not screw it up really. Like usually if it's like a thing we rehearse for probably a week before, even if it's for like a 5 minute performance.
Yeah, I kind of, I mean, I know this might sound kind of, I always like to I want every gig to feel like I'm just playing by myself in my room in a way, because I'm
That's
like just
cool.
comfortable, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
Uh, but do you draw on the audience and because I kind of feel like sometimes venues are a big attack on the senses. I get overwhelmed and like I'm just trying to like tune it all out. Like how do you relate to the audience in that way?
I feel like hmm, it's different in every situation because like the way you interact and kind of feed off of like an audience in a place like say Smalls or Smoke versus playing like a festival like Lollapalooza or Coachella are very different. And there's like you can kind of sense like whether the audience is into it or not. There's like a real energy because there was I'll never forget this. There was one show that the audience was not into it. It was at a festival and it was clear that they weren't there for us, so they were just kind of like just like half clapping, didn't. But like and but with that, I'm not with that same band. We played a festival like a week or two later, and every solo I took, the audience was like freaking out. And then with this one, they were just like, "What are y'all playing?" Like we don't. They didn't know the music at all, so like they were just like they didn't care. So yeah, it's just I
Yeah,
think the audience is a big thing when it comes to playing live.
yeah, and
Like a
it's,
lot of
sometimes like the size of the place, the really big places, it's like it almost doesn't feel like it's not real. You're like in a dream or something, you know? At least I
yeah.
kind of get that way sometimes, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like playing New Year's Eve, it felt kind of surreal. It was like people everywhere because I did like New Year's Eve a couple years ago in Times Square, and I've never been to Times Square for New Year's like ever. But I had to this year because I was playing, and it was just like it was freezing, and there was people everywhere. Luckily, like we didn't have to stay there, so as soon as we were done, we all just kind of like peaced out.
No, I love it. Has there ever been any times that mistakes you've made that actually ended up being like really great, whether recording or performing, that you can recall?
I don't know. I make too many mistakes, so I just try to like go with them. Like if I do, I just kind of go with it. So there's not one instance that I can think of offhand that like I would say I think it's kind of a mix. Yeah.
No, it's well, we're always taking risks though, too, right?
Oh yeah, and also I think we're also our own worst critics when
Well,
it
I was
comes.
talking to someone yesterday and they said, yeah, you're the only person who's heard every single note that you've played.
Sure.
So it was a little bit of different. I also wanted to was just kind of curious too, that any like non-musical memories that you have that just inspire you whenever you're performing, because sometimes when we're performing, we may not be in the right headspace, so we draw from our past. Do you ever like go to that for inspiration? Like think about any, concerts you went to or anything like that?
Sure. Good question. I don't. I think before like any kind of like bigger show, I think my main thing is just to stay cool and relaxed. Because like you can't swing if you're super tense, and you're probably not gonna have like real mental clarity and being aware of what's going on if you're like got a million things on your mind and you're kind of all over the place. And
Yeah, whenever I would go to play big gigs in the city, I'd like listen to Coltrane in the car and just like try to, but it's like suicide sometimes to do stuff like that, you
Yeah.
know? So, yeah, I mean, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And is there anything, where can we find you, find your music? You want to let us know, social media and websites and stuff?
Oh yeah, sure. All my social media is Jason Plays Sax. It's pretty simple to find. That's I think Instagram and X, Twitter, whatever it's called now, and Facebook. And I don't have TikTok. I don't think. I think I had it for a little while, but I don't use it anymore.
I'm not really into TikTok, but you're on Instagram and all the good stuff.
I'm on
But
Instagram. That's the one I mainly use to like post gigs and playing whatever's going on. That's my main.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks so much.
Of course, man. Thanks, Abe. I appreciate it, man.